we're really going to focus today and hear mostly from Dr. Shields and Dr. Friedman, who thank you so much for joining us and helping us out with this. We're going to talk about how to get quality letters of recommendation, and quality being the operative word, because you'll all be able to get letters of recommendation, but what you really want are letters that are going to help medical schools to discern things that they think are competencies and personal characteristics that they value. So they want to make sure that they're able to assess things like your resilience. So maybe you didn't start off that well in a class, but you went to office hours, you worked really hard, you made the effort. You know, if they can reflect on those kinds of things, that's great for you. Your intellectual curiosity, the way that you approach learning, if you share with them things that you've done outside of your academic setting, you know, and you get to know them a little bit and you provide them with helpful things like your resume, then they can include those kinds of things in your letter. It will make it so much stronger. So we're going to hear from them how they try to develop their letters, and I particularly picked these two because they write great letters of recommendation. Sorry, now you're going to have 30 people ask whether or not they know you.
Dr. Shields, I don't know you, but I heard you write a really great letter, and so.
But you know, it's really nice to have somebody who writes the letter about you, and not necessarily just about their course, although of course that's part of it, but about how you were in the course and other things they came to know about you. So the more you put into this, the more you'll get out of it. I just want to share with you a couple of nuts and bolts about how we collect your letters, and then I'm going to turn it over to these two. So you all know that you need 2 academic science letters. One of them can be a science research letter. If you've conducted research, in most cases that's fine. But we need 2 academic science letters, generally from people who've taught you in a biology, chemistry, or physics, most preferably. But we've also talked about how if you're an engineering major or a kinesiological sciences major or something, you know, maybe one of those 2 science letters comes from your major if it's a science-heavy major, okay? We recommend that you have a non-science academic letter. This is a recommendation, not a requirement, but medical schools like to see how you think outside of the sciences, not just how you think in the sciences. We like to see a clinical letter from some clinical setting you were in. If you've done research, you should include your research mentor. So for most people, we're somewhere between 3 and 6 letters. 6 letters is the maximum that we'll let you include in your packet. So somewhere in between, just based on what your experiences are. And the other thing I want to say about that, and specifically for the AMCAS application now, they ask you, what are your 3 most meaningful experiences? And your most meaningful experiences may connect well with some of these letters of recommendation. So if your research is your most meaningful, of course you're going to have your research mentor. If you're mentioning some other professional capacity in which you worked, your mentor or supervisor might be somebody then that you would look to for a letter, because if it was really meaningful and you spent a lot of time there, that's somebody who would hopefully know you well and would have, you know, really good things to say about you, because quality over quantity all the time with your letters of recommendation, okay? The last thing is how they get to us. So we use a process called VE Collect. Any of you done your VE Collect accounts yet? Got them started? Okay, a few of you. So this is the only thing that you can really be working on right now until we release our pre-health packet on December 15th. But you can open up your VE Collect accounts at any time. There's a form you can print out from our website, or you can pick one up in the office. And very soon, we'll actually be able to collect these electronically too, and we'll put that over the listserv when we're able to do that. And you'll be able to pay with your credit card. Currently, you have to pay with a check, so if you wait a couple weeks, you'll be able to pay with your credit card, which is big progress for us.
Or your mom's credit card.
Or your mom's credit card, not my credit card. That's all we're worried about.
Yeah.
So the VE Collect account is, you know, you'll open this, you'll communicate with your letter writer, they'll make sure that they agree to write the letter before you send them a request, because it's very awkward when they get the request before you've had a conversation with them and asked them to write, although I'm sure
that should be on the list.
Yes, so ask them, get their okay, enter them into V-Collect. If you've already opened your V-Collect account, you know this is pretty straightforward. You enter them as a letter writer. There's a little icon that looks like a mail thing. You send them an email. They receive it. They respond in that email. It comes into V-Collect. The next day you'll be able to see it because it takes about 24 hours to verify. So this is how you're going to collect your letters of recommendation. This is going to how you're going to keep track of whether or not they've arrived. And we need them all by June 1st if you're applying for 2014 for medical school, dental school, podiatry, or optometry. Okay, so I'll leave it there.
So I've been appointed to go first by Dr. Shields. I don't have anything set, so if you have questions, please ask them as we're going. It's interesting to tell people how to write or give suggestions for how to write good letters with hopefully you guys not making it seem like you're sucking up to try to get good letters. Because you want to be genuine in your stuff. I'm trying to think of like sort of stories that I can tell about things that have made letter writing easier or harder. And I guess in this I'll include sort of non-med school letters also, because we get letters for requests at all times of the year for NIH things and NSF training grants and all sorts of things. And so hitting on what Wendy said about asking first, I was at home and I got an email from I think it was an REU program in Wisconsin or something like that, out of the middle of nowhere. And I'm like, I searched my entire mailbox. I'm trying to look for this guy's name. I can't find it anywhere. So at home, I don't have access to all my grades. So I go onto Elms and I find out he took my course like 3 semesters before, and he got some kind of B or something like that. So then I go to the university directory and I find where his address is and I email him. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? I got this out of nowhere. You haven't given me anything because there are certain standard things that I ask for, which I'll tell you about in a second. So this is like on a Friday. So the thing was due the following Friday. So then I don't do anything because he's never asked me to write a letter before. So then the next Thursday comes around. And at like 6 o'clock at night, I get a reply from him. I sent the email to him like 5 minutes after I got the request. He waits like 6 days. I'm like, I was going to ask you, and I'm sorry, and this and that. And I had nothing to write for him. And so I sent him a pretty nasty email back that was like, I'm going to do it. Don't ever ask me for a letter again. And then I really wrote like about as short a letter as I could write, which was probably about a half a page. Which most of it was like introduction and conclusion. And then I sent it in. So ask your letter writers beforehand. That's the most, it sounds silly to say, but you have to remember for people that teach your courses, and this is probably true more so for those of us that teach the lower level courses where we have, a couple of hundred people per semester. We have short-term memories. I think I do. I can't speak for
we have so many students.
Right.
I mean, it's like in the spring semester, in one of my classes, I have 350 students. I'm going to remember a lot, but I'm going to forget more than I'm going to remember. So, really.
Yeah, so keep in mind that the people that you're asking letters for have other things to do, and so and they have short-term memories. And so the best thing you can do is really prepare things on your end to make the process just a lot easier. I like for people to ask in advance. I have courses that I have 500 people, 700 people in a semester, 500 people in one course. And even if I remember someone really well in one semester, a lot of times I'll forget them by the time the next semester rolls around. Not because I meant to, but because if I'm not seeing someone every week, if I'm not seeing someone on a regular basis, I'll forget who they are. I'll be reminded if they tell me their name, and then it'll kind of slowly come back to me. But, if you're going to apply to med school in 2 years and you do really well in a course in a semester, I think it's good to go to the person and say, look, I did really well in your course. 2 years down the road, I'm going to want a letter for med school. Can I at least send you some information now so you can send an outline or set up an outline? And that way, when everything else comes around, 2 years from now, when we need to write the letter, I've got the outline there. I've got all the details from the semester where you came to my office and you asked questions and did well in this exam, and these are the things that I remember that separated you from other students in the class. Those kind of things are easier to do at the end of the semester that they happen in, instead of 2 years down the road after 2,000 people have been between when you took the semester and when you're asking for the letter.
I'm going to interrupt here, and I'm going to agree 1,000% with that, because for people like us who teach these very large introductory classes, that's critical. So many kids come in and out of our classrooms. particularly for somebody like both of us, when we coordinate these really big classes. For him, it's the introductory chemistry in 271, where he's going through 800, and I'm going through 800 a year with the genetics. Wow. But if you remind me at the end of the semester, you send me stuff, I'll write the outline, and I'll have it ready to go when you email me for AMCAST in 2 years. So yeah, a big thumbs up for what he just said.
Other things are, I think, how do you separate yourselves from the majority of the students in the class? In my classes, I don't see a lot of the students. A lot of students go to office hours for the TAs, and so they know the TAs really well there. If that kind of thing happens in a TA or multiple TAs know you, I would say ask them to write something for you, and then they can send it along to me, and then I can take those comments from the TA. It's got classic kind of violence or something.
Let's hope it doesn't spill over into here.
Asking a TA for comments really helps out a lot. The TAs are the guys that are in lab with you on a weekly basis. They can testify to things that we can't, like how you work in groups, how responsible you are, how well you are getting things done in a timely manner in a laboratory situation. So TA comments are really easy for me to incorporate. They make lives easier. You can either have your TAs write out a paper thing, or you can just send an email along. That kind of thing makes the process easier. And obviously, things that just separate you. In terms of like stories that I've had in my courses. One student one time asked a question about something in class that was very peripherally related to what we were doing. And so I told her, in class it was above the scope of the class or whatever. And then she went home and she had some article that she had read in Scientific American or something like that was related to what she asked about. So she sent me a link to the article. And I was floored by that she, what the heck is going on? She sent me this article and I read the article and I was just kind of flabbergasted. It was a really high level paper and she read it, she understood it, she understood the role, maybe I'm watching a movie. She understood the role of this paper and what we were talking about in class, which shows the ability to make connections between different things. And that one incident was enough for me to write her a really strong letter. I felt it showed a lot about how she was as a student, the kind of things she was paying to, and what she was thinking about in class, and the ability to sort of connect things together that seemed disparate. When you submit letters, the more information that I have, or we, I guess, have, the better. So I always ask for a resume or a CV at a minimum. If you have some kind of personal statement or something that these long form answers that you have to write as part of Wendy's application process, that kind of stuff helps out. The more that we can get about you as people, the easier it is to write a letter. You think about what we have at the end of the semester. I have a spreadsheet that has your name in it. I have a bunch of grades for assignments. I have a letter grade that I assign you at the end of the semester, and that's it. And so that kind of stuff you can fill out. As a boilerplate, I usually put in, I recommend this person, or strongly or enthusiastically or something like that. I talk a little bit about the class, what was covered, where does it fit in the sequence, what did you get in the class, how do you rank, compared to the size of the class. Then I'll put things that I know about you, how you work, what kind of a worker you are, if you're really interested in the material, if you've done research in other places. That kind of stuff goes after that. And then at the end is sort of a summary. But the more things that you can do to sort of separate yourself from the bulk of the students that we don't see, that makes it a lot easier, I think, to write a letter. That includes other things like GSS is great. Easy to write letters for GSS people because they do this stuff every week. They have to meet with us to talk about how things are going. If you do research, you get publications or presentations or, at conferences or whatever, easy letters to write. Those kind of things that really separate you from the bulk of the students who don't do a lot of that stuff. It makes the letter writing process a lot easier. I can't think of anything else. I'll turn it over to Patty.
Okay. So I agree with a lot of what Lee just said. So the first thing, I cannot reiterate that enough. Please talk to the person first before you sign them up for FarmCast, for AMCAST, for whatever. Because there is nothing, frankly, more irritating than getting a request for a letter of recommendation that you don't know nothing about. My favorite story is I got an email from Peace Corps for someone who would put me down for a Peace Corps. And this was somebody who I wouldn't let take care of my dog, much less, go out and represent the United States as a Peace Corps volunteer. And I was just like mortified that this person put me down as a thing. And then they called me up because I never filled out the form, because I'm like, I am not filling out this form for this person. And they're like, yeah, so-and-so put you down as a reference. And I said, I know he did. And they go, well, what do you think? And I said, I think if you let him loose in a third world country, they would declare war on the United States. And the guy's on the other, this guy on the other line of the phone, he goes, you're kidding, right? And I go, oh, no, I'm not. And he goes, dead silence for about 5 seconds. And he goes, okay, then. So I'm assuming you're not recommending him. I am not recommending him. Does he know that you're not recommending him? He never asked me for this letter of recommendation. And he goes, okay, then. I'm going to say no. Okay. I go, is there anything else you'd like to add? And I go, I think that pretty much sums it up. And he goes, okay, then. And he hung up. And I thought, well, maybe that'll teach him. And as far as I know, he never did go into the Peace Corps. But, and if he had asked me first, I would have told him, I and not good conscience can give you a letter of recommendation. And I will tell anyone who asks me, I will let them know, yes, I can write you a letter. Or I will say, I cannot write you the kind of letter that you will want. Because I'll let them know that right up front. Because I don't want to write a letter that is namby-pamby. Because you can get that from anybody. And if you want a letter from me, I want it to be a good letter. I don't want it to be a poopy letter. You can get that from anybody. If you want it from me, it's going to be a Shields letter. And I want it to shine. So, and that's pretty much what it is. Here's the other thing, too, and this is something that I think is really helpful. I've had a couple of people do this, and I think it's really, really helpful. If it's been a while since you have been in contact with that professor, and particularly if you really think that professor is going to remember you, hope they remember you, attach a small picture. I'm not saying don't make it a 2 megabyte picture, but a small, 25 KB picture of you, so they remember you. We have the ability to bring up older, but we have we can only go back so far in UMEC to look at your pictures. And frankly, a lot of your photo IDs look nothing like you. So if you can attach a picture that say, Doctor, I used to have this one kid who, I loved him, but he had been out of school for a while. He said, hey, Dr. Shields, it's Kevin. I hope you remember me, but just in case you don't, and he attached his picture. And he did. He ended up getting into medical school you remember Kevin Chai?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he has a brother who went to dental school.
Right.
Yeah.
And I got a letter from him, and it had been a while. And he's like, hey, Dr. Shields, I hope you remember me, but, in case you don't, here's my picture. And he's like, but it had been a while, and it was great. I'm glad he attached his picture, because once I saw the picture, it was like, yeah, I remember you. If I'd not seen the picture, I probably would have gone, who is he? But that's great, and I think that's really a good idea. Do that. The other thing, too, is if you're asking for something that doesn't have let the people know when it's due. Never ask for something that's due within 2 or 3 weeks. Ever. If you are that slow, forget it. It's people like us cannot turn something around that quickly unless we have done a letter before that we can adapt. Okay? And that's a really important thing, because sometimes it takes a while to craft, and what I like to do is wait and do all of my letters kind of like I block out a day, and I try to ram out quite a few letters on one day. But I try not to use there are many professors who do kind of form letters. I wish I had the ability to tell you, don't ask for a letter from this person. That would be inappropriate. But there are many professors who kind of use a form letter and then just plug your name and your grade into this form letter. And that's unfortunate, because you don't want a letter to be like that. You want a letter to be about you. And I try not to. I have a little bit of a formulaic thing, because I'm writing a letter that is going to be X, I'm delighted or I'm happy or whatever. So most of the time I'm very enthusiastic, but to write a letter for so-and-so who took this class with me, and this is the reason why I'm very delighted or enthusiastic or whatever to write this letter. And then I write why I am, and then I sum it up with whether I think they're going to be a delightful doctor, or whether they're going to be, a thoughtful doctor, or whether they're going to be just the best damn doctor there is. the other thing is I just want to talk just a little bit, and then we'll just throw the floor open, about the kinds of things that, to me, make you guys stand out. So Lee made a really good point. Like, I just wrote a letter for a girl who got a B, a low B, actually, in one of the classes that I took. And I just sent out a bunch of letters for her. She's applying to dental hygiene school. And she got a low B in my 105 class. And I had no trouble writing a really strong letter for her today. And so the question is, how can I write a really strong letter for someone who in a really large introductory class did, okay in the class? And the reason was that she sat in the front row. First day of class, she walked up and she kind of tripped over her. She almost fell into me. Very funny way to meet her. So I remembered it that way. But she got an A in freshman chemistry. And so that was her first semester, she got an A in freshman chemistry. So the year that she was taking my 105 class, she was a GSS leader in freshman chemistry. And so she attended all of my GSS sessions. And we immediately bonded over GSS. So she would come to me and go, oh, I think your GSS leader just rocks. And I'm a GSS leader, and I'm learning so much from her by taking. So she would come to my office, she would ask me questions about class, and we would talk about how GSS was in helping her, how she was learning to be a better GSS leader by going to my GSS leaders class. And then the following semester, she became a GSS leader for 105. She came to my office and said, okay, so I'm doing 105 now for a different teacher, but I'm using all the stuff that you use. So do you mind? Because I think you're such a cool teacher and whatever. And so she came to my office like this fall, and we started off. And so she came to see me. She would meet with the 105 teacher that she was using, but she would use a lot of my stuff because she felt like I explained the class really well. And we bonded over that. And then she needed letters of recommendation. She came to me. I knew her really well, and I know the way that her mind works. And, she had a really rough start to my semester, but she really picked it up at the end, and that's why she ended up with a B in the class. I could address all of those things in her letters of recommendation. The fact that she was able to break down tough concepts and build them up for people who didn't understand them. The fact that she was a leader. She loved standing up in those GSS sessions. She was very enthusiastic about everything that she did. Those kinds of things. I had no trouble putting together really great letters for her today. Okay? So those, and the fact that she fell into me when she met me. I remembered that, and I put that in the letter.
That doesn't mean you should intentionally fall into
it. But I mean, and all of those things, it turned out to be, I thought, a really great letter, but it was very personable. And she's a delightful person. I gave her a very strong recommendation. She got a B in my class, so I didn't have any trouble. Another letter that I wrote today was for someone who's applying to graduate school. And she's in the second year of an IRDA at NIH right now. And I was one of the people that wrote the letter of recommendation for her IRDA. And again, she got a B in my genetics class. And that was one of the strongest letters I ever wrote for an IRDA program. And I met her, it turns out, because I scared the hell out of her in my genetics class. Because she's a Jewish student, and the year that she took my genetics class was one of every 3 years, the Jewish holidays. It's like this semester.
Oh, they all on the same day.
It's like it all ends up like if you end up missing like a boat. Is anyone here Jewish?
If you're a Tuesday person,
it's brutal. It's like the way the Jewish holidays work out. And if you are a conservative Jew, and she was, it's brutality on a basket. It's just horrid. You end up missing 4 days in a row, and it's just horrid. It's like you can't make it up. And she just every week she was coming in. I have to miss class again, and I'm just like, oh my God, why are you even taking this class this semester? Why did you sign up for class on this day? You're driving me nuts. And she said, I'm not trying to do this on purpose, Dr. Shields. And I'm just like, But, as the semester went on, she just kept coming in, and she's like, okay, I'm all caught up now. Now we can really start talking genetics. I mean, that's exactly what she did. She was, I am all caught up now. Now we're going to start talking genetics. She actually did that in my office, and it was the funniest thing ever. And she got a B in my class, and mainly it was because she practically missed the first month of class with the Jewish holidays. And I just loved this kid. I loved everything about her. She tried so hard. She was just wiped out by the first month of class, and I just loved everything about this kid. And she came into my office when she'd just be in the building. Hey, Dr. Shields, what is cooking, you know? No, nothing much, you know. And I just loved everything about her. Everything about her. And she found research. She was doing research in veterinary sciences, which I know nothing about. And she would come in and go, so this is what I'm doing this week. And I'd go, well, you just tell me. And she'd be talking about something, and I'd go, ew. But she would tell me about it, and it was really interesting. And it showed me that she had so much interest in science and so much excitement. And I was willing to listen to it. I wanted to listen to it. And I just loved that about her enthusiasm and her love for this kind of stuff. It was great. You know, she was willing to share it. She wanted to. Great, great, great kid. I was able to give her an incredibly strong letter of recommendation. So, again, another kid that I wrote a letter for today, for an ERTA at NIH. And she ended up with an A- in my class. She got an A- in my class. She might have done better, but she had the highest final grade. Highest grade on the final. On the same day, she had to take an organic chemistry final and a physics final. She had all three on the same day. Shoot me. And she had the highest grade on my final. And that's how I remember her, because I remember being shocked about that. And she came to my office to see the final, because she ended up with an A- and not the A. She goes, oh, I was so sure I was going to get the A. And I go, you did this with that after you took those. Really, holla, I thought you did great. And she goes, can I just come see you sometimes if I have questions? And I go, sure. And so she was taking a class in genetics, a upper level genetics class, and she came in to see me the following semester, and I'm like, you look familiar. And she goes, I took a class with you. And I'm like, oh, okay. And so she asked a question, and then she left. And then she would drop by just once or twice, and by then I just remembered her first name. But then, by then she would drop in enough that I remembered her name. So she just kept up enough not to be annoying, but just enough so that I would remember who she was. And I remembered the fact that she got the highest grade on that final, on a day when she took both an organic and a thing. And in my mind, that kind of shows real dedication in a tough situation, which a lot of you have to put up with. And so I remember that. And then, that kind of stuff. And then I also wrote a letter today for 2 people applying to PharmCast, and on the PharmCast system, applying to pharmacy schools. And one of them was not a great letter. And that was because I know very little about this person, and I said, I actually told her you'd be better served getting another letter, because I don't know all that much about you. But she did well in my class, so she wanted a letter. And my letter was kind of like, yeah, this is my class, blah, 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 blah. She did well. I don't know much about her. It was a poopy letter. The other person got a B+, but came to all of my reviews. I make students sign in on my reviews. I had that information down. And I keep that information. I pull it out. I keep all these little clip sheets. So I can go, they came to my reviews, and I can remember, I have this semester, I have this one kid, I know she's going to ask for a letter of recommendation at some point in time. But I'll be ready, and when she does, and I'll be able to say something about her. Right? So there are a lot of, there are reasons. Keep in touch, do stuff like that. Was able to talk about dental brigades. There's lots of things that you could talk about if you just keep involved. If you haven't, get involved with clubs. Ask people teachers if they want to get involved with the clubs, or let them know about the clubs that you're involved with. Right? Do you have any with the chemistry, not sorority, fraternity?
Oh, yeah, I know people in the chem fraternity. Yeah.
That's one of the ways that
Playing
you.
broomball.
Right, but that's part of the thing. Like, for me, I'm involved with 5 different groups on campus. Relay for Life, Colleges Against Cancer. It's not that there's a Colleges for Cancer, but dental brigades, and the American Society for Microbiology group. So, there are lots of different groups. That's 4 groups, sorry. But that's another way to get involved with your teachers. So that's what I had just for.
just to kind of follow up on what Patty said about some other stuff, don't be afraid to get to know the people that teach your courses. You know, she said that she has people that come in just to say hi and stuff, and I have people that come in to say hi too. And for me, I love that stuff. It's so nice when you're, you know, we come here for 8 or 10 hours a day and we're writing letters and getting ready for classes and dealing with students complaining about grades on things and, you know, who knows what. And it's so nice for somebody to just come in and just kind of chat and stuff. And, you know, for most people, I think that take UNIV 100, you have to do some, you know, go and meet your professor and ask questions and stuff like that. Ask those kind of questions, you know. People ask me where I went to college and, you know, why I became you know, an instructor at a university. And those kind of things lead to conversations that allow, you know, us to get to know you and you to get to know us. And those kind of personal traits that we can put into letters are really important and powerful. I think it makes it makes a letter a lot more whole if we can put in stuff beyond simply the, you know, got this course you know, got this in my grade and it's respectful and, you know, easy to talk to and that kind of stuff and would, you know, interact with patients well and things like that. I love it when students come by just to say hi. It's such a nice breakup from most of the stuff that I tend to do on campus, and so, you know, come in and shoot the S with your, you know, the people that teach your courses if you want.
I think I can speak. I think this is true for a lot of the people that are in our position. I know Dr. Dixon, her office is always filled with people.
It's because she doesn't teach well in class.
And then, but it's like people, but this is true for people. It's like, you know, Dr. Compton. He's another instructor. He loves it when students come to the class, but people are afraid of him, and he wants people to come. It's really funny, and he's just like this big teddy bear, and he wants students to come visit him, and nobody visits him, and he's always very sad. He's like, we always call him Eeyore, you know, but it's like, and he wants students to come visit him. So if you ever have Dr. Compton, go visit him. He loves it when people come visit him. If you're in life sciences, please go visit him. But yeah, most of us, we want you to come visit him, and I do. I mean, I constantly. One of my saddest things is when I get my teaching evaluations and somebody says I'm not approachable, and I'm like, are you kidding me? Really? Because it's like I have people lines outside my hallway some days, and it's like, are you kidding me, people? Really? But that's what we want. I mean, it's like sometimes it's like you have to wait to get into my office, and I'm like, wait, really? I'll give you a chocolate. I have Kleenex if I make you cry. Trust me, it is worth the wait.
I have Kleenex too, and chocolate from leftover Halloween candy.
Yes.
I have all those things too.
Well, you make more people cry than me.
Thank you. Message, I think, is that it's about building professional relationships over time. You know, because these are people who know things that you ideally may want to know. And you maybe don't even know what it is that's going to come out of an interaction when you walk into their office. But building professional relationships with adults can be hard. It can be a little bit intimidating. It's absolutely critical, not just at this stage while you're trying to get letters of recommendation, which, by the way, they know, so you don't need to feel weird, like it's some weird contrived thing that you're developing a relationship with a faculty member, because, you know, it's part of the mentorship role that they're playing. And as you go forward in your life into medical school or dental school or whatever path you're taking, you're going to need to continue to build professional relationships always. And so you want to develop that skill. It is hard. For some of you, it is very out of your comfort zone, and if so, so much the better. You know, it's important for you to have those experiences that make you a little bit uncomfortable, because trust me, where you're going next is going to make you uncomfortable every single day for a long time. So this is the start of some great new relationships. And if you haven't connected with any faculty yet and you need letters by June 1st, it's time to make some new friends.
It is. And here's the other thing, too, is we're used to this. We do this. This is what we do for a living. So we're used to it. So if, you know, we'll help you through it. We hardly ever bite. Lee's been censured for that, but he doesn't do it anymore.
And the tip about the photo was good. You know, it is sometimes the case where a faculty member will agree to write you a letter, but they're really not sure who you are, and you have a name that's a little unusual, and the pronoun that they use may not be correct. You know, so if you give them a picture, you can hopefully avoid that. And
In some cases. Trust me, I've seen some. Oh, man.
I had a guy that came up to me a couple weeks ago in my class, and he had emailed back and forth with me, and I'd been emailing his TA, and he goes, "Hey, I think you think I'm a girl." Okay, I was like, "Oh yeah, I did."
But, you know, the picture can solve that. And also on our end, we do review all of these letters. We're looking for things like that. We have multiple people in the office reading the letters as they come through. So making sure that that stuff doesn't happen is part of the work that we do. But you can help us by, you know, providing them with a little bit more information about you. So, I mean, you know, the setup that you do going into this will have a bearing on the outcome. So give them the resume, give them a copy of your personal statement, at least a draft of it to the extent that you have one prepared. I don't know how you all feel about this. Some faculty like to have a copy of the transcript. Some mentors in general like to have a copy of the transcript. Many faculty have access
I was
to
going to
the
say,
transcript.
a lot of us do. If they don't have access, it's really important. A lot of people in our position have access, but a lot of faculty don't have access to that kind of stuff. So.
Right. And then the other thing is that being able to provide that comparative information, how you are compared with your peers, is actually really helpful experience or information for the letter, particularly if a faculty member's been teaching this subject for 20 years and they would consider you in the top 5% of all students they've taught. I mean, that's actually really, really helpful information, and a lot of faculty will include that, which is easy for them maybe to come up with, but you know, that kind of comparative information is helpful. So what questions do you have for us? Go here and then back there.
What would you recommend for a junior or senior who didn't make those connections as a freshman or a sophomore to start doing at this point to kind of rekindle that? Or do you think that they should wait for their next semester's professors?
How are you doing in your classes right now?
Fine.
Fine. I would actually, as a junior right now, because you're applying this coming cycle, then what I would actually start looking this is November. If you are getting an A in a biology chemistry class right now is the time to walk up to start looking into an office hour right now. Right now, do what you can to make connections right now. You know, you have next semester too, but see what you can do about this semester. Target a class now. Take a class that you're doing really well in. See, are you sitting in the front? That's the next thing too. You know, I mean, nobody wants to sit in the front. I don't know why not. I don't spit on my students. I seldom do, well, that's not true too, but I do a lot of strange things in class. I know you do as well. But the point of the matter is that I have these huge classes. I make an incredible effort to learn the names of between 50 and 100 students' first names. And invariably, at least 70 to 80% of the names that I learn are going to be in the first 6, 7 rows in front of me. And it's because then I can just go, Monica, da-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba, and I can pick on those kids, and that's okay. But the great thing about it is I remember those kids. And those kids come to me for a letter of recommendation, I'm down with it. Because I've picked on them and I've abused those kids. And I'm okay, and they're okay with, I feel okay about giving them a letter of recommendation. I've abused them for a semester. I'm fine with that. But the point is that they have earned it. They have sat in front. They have answered my questions. You know, you need to sit up front. You need to be in their face. Right? If you're sitting in the back and you're playing on your computer or your cell phone. I don't have one, you know. But then, yeah, nothing. And so you need to start thinking. So that's the kind of thing you guys need to start thinking of. And I'm not saying, you know, I have this one adorable child this semester who is a bit of a dweeb, you know. A cute dweeb, but a dweeb. And every day he is asking me a question. And sometimes I feel like he's asking me a question just so I'll remember. Trust me, I know who he is. And you don't, there is that, as you said at the beginning, don't do it just to do it. There is that borderline thing. But get up front, ask the questions, get your face in their face so they know who you are. Don't overdo it, though.
The other thing, without giving away secrets to sucking up, I've had this happen probably about 10 times since I've been here, but I've had someone who took, Gen Chem with me or something like that, and then they take Orgo the next semester, and they'll come in and they'll say something like, in Orgo now we're using all this stuff that you showed us in Gen Chem or something like that. So they're making connections between the course that they're taking now and the course that they took previously. And when you go back and you tell someone you had the previous semester, you taught me this and now we're using this, and I really appreciated the way you taught me or something like that. That kind of thing for me can make my week.
Yeah.
Because it's really good to hear that we're doing the kind of things that we're supposed to do in terms of preparing you guys for courses that you take later on. And so don't be afraid to walk into, some organic professor's office and say, look, we're taking biochem and now we're doing all these aldol condensations in retro, and this is what we did in your whole semester, and so I really see the connection. That's a way to sort of establish the connection, kind of in an ex post facto manner. But that's a way to do it.
Yeah, so I know you've been talking a lot about what is good interactions to have with your professor, and you were kind of touching on this about the balance, but what are things that are, bad and that you shouldn't do when interacting with the professor?
It's just like there's a million ways to do things wrong, and there's 10 ways to do it right. There was so many. What was that? Getting combative over stuff is bad. If you have a question about something and you're unhappy about something, don't have an attitude about it. When we run things in our courses, we have to delegate responsibilities to other people. I have 15 TAs or 20 TAs a semester that do my grading for me. And what I grade in the course is actually very little. I grade, 15% of 2 exams that are given. And so when if you're thinking in the future you might want to get a letter from someone. Close that door. It's really noisy. Thank you. When you go in and be respectful of the fact that sometimes mistakes get made and things happen that aren't supposed to happen. Thank you. You should come back inside.
You didn't have to leave, honey.
It's a good way to get out, though. If you want to leave, that's what you do. Pretend like you're going to close the door and then go on the other side of it. Don't get combative and respect people's time. That's something that you should not do and something that you should do.
I'm going to second this, but I'm actually going to go a step further. And I'm going to use that word respect. Okay?
If you can spell it.
If I could spell it. R-E-S-P-C-T. That's that. Okay, so here's the thing. This is what has happened to me on numerous occasions. When you come, I am all for somebody coming back for points on an exam, on an assignment, on a whatever. In fact, I enjoy that give and take. I'm all about it because a lot of times students will come back to me and go, I was thinking this, and I'm like, okay, and I'll be thinking about it, and I'll go, I see your point. And a lot of times I'll give back a point here or a point there. But if I go, this is the way I was looking at it, and this is the reason we graded it that way, so no, I'm not going to give you that point. And then the student does this, but you should give it to me because of this. And I'll go, no, this is the answer, and that's the reason why you got these points. And then they go, but. And I'm like, I have given them 2 opportunities now to gracefully stop, and yet they continue. They have lost sight of the fact that I have already given them 2 opportunities, and they will not let it go. And that is where you have crossed the line. And that's usually when I go, I think we're done with this conversation. And then they go, but. And that's when I sit there and I go, I'm going to tell this kid to get the hell out of my office in a few minutes. And they don't know when to stop. And that's a real problem. Here's the other thing. I have office hours. And a lot of kids can't make my office hours. I have a huge number of kids. I am okay with that. I say, email me. I'll meet with you anytime. I will meet with kids. Yesterday, I had 2 appointments after 6 in the evening, even though I came in at 6 in the morning. I am okay with that. I will do that if that's the only time that you can meet me. I'm fine with that because that's what I do. It's the reason why people don't. But here's the thing. I made an appointment yesterday for 6:30 for someone, and you know what time they showed up? 10 of 7. You think I'm not going to remember that for that kid? Oh, I don't think so. That's not respecting me and my time. It would be okay if that were, say, 11:30 in the afternoon, or in the morning, and they came at 10 of 12. It wouldn't have been okay then. But I'm sitting there going, I'm here at 6:30 at night. I stayed late to meet that kid, and they didn't come till 10 of 7. I'm going to beat the shit out of that kid.
There's your first bleep.
I'm sorry.
It's okay, but we might have crossed the line.
But I was really, to me, it was like that was so not right. I mean, I stayed late to meet this kid, and it just blew me off. And it was like when they got there, and they go, oops, well, I guess it's not really a big deal. And that's another thing. Respect the time. If you're going to be late, email me or call me on the cell phone. Now, I don't have a cell phone, but I have an office phone, and I have a computer. They could have, emailed me, they could have called me, and I got neither thing from that kid. And I thought that was rude. I was very, very upset with that. Here's another thing. Students will often come to my office hours. And I'm like, come to your office hours with questions. And they want me to redo my entire lecture for them. And I'm like, I am not going to do that. I love lecturing. I love imparting knowledge. I love the give and take of questions, and they want me to explain something. But I am not going to redo the entire lecture for somebody who didn't understand it. Ask me a question. I will answer that question.
Or didn't go. I can't go to class, but did you cover anything important?
Right. It's like, no, really. No, we just sat and drank Tanqueray.
You weren't there, so how could we?
How could we? It was an unimportant lecture. Right. And again, that's so what they sit there and they'll say, okay, I have a few more questions, and then they'll just kind of go through their notes like this. And literally 5 minutes will pass while they are flipping through their notes, trying to come up with another question. And that's just a blatant disrespect of my time. So that's this unpreparedness when you go into somebody's office is very, very rude. And again, that's another thing that you should not do. Respect that person's time. This is for somebody like me or Dr. Friedman, Dr. Dixon, Dr. Compton, we are lecturers, and so we are considered less important than other people. But if you did this in a researcher's office, they would pick you up and throw you out. Because they would consider themselves much more important than us. But it's just disrespectful of anybody's time. And in my mind, those are some of the worst things you can do if you are trying to show interest or trying to be a engaged student.
So generally professionalism.
Yeah, this is just part of learning how to be a professional person. Respect that person's time, and they will respect your time. I won't start talking about how cute my husband is unless you want me to.
Any other questions for us? Yeah.
Would you guys prefer that we come in and ask in person for a letter, or would you prefer email?
I like when people come in person. It puts a face to the name, which is important again in terms of this, getting a visual. And if we need to ask for things, then I think it's easier to say, send me a resume or something like that. At that point, instead of having it back and forth. Now, I will say over email, you know, it's easier if I say send me a resume and then you have it in your email inbox so you know to do it. But I like when people come in just because at that point, like if you come into my course and you had me, I need to check your grade to make sure that I'm going to write you a letter. You know, if somebody comes in with like a C-, I might be like, you might be better off going to someone else or something like that. So I like to look at that kind of stuff when people are in my office just to make sure that my comfort level is okay with writing a letter at that point.
I'm kind of the opinion I would rather you ask me in person, and because I can usually look at you and sometimes I'll go, what grade did you get in my class?
Yeah.
And then hopefully you told me the truth. But actually I had one kid lie to me once.
Did
Really
he
happened.
think, you were not going to find out?
I know, I was like, really? Anyway, but I would rather you ask me in person too. And then that way, and then I'll go, yeah, but this is what I need for you to send me, and then I'll get that email reminder.
So, following up on your question then, is it a bad idea to email and say, then, I'd like to stop in and drop off these things if you're okay with writing me a letter, I'll bring by my resume, etc.
That's almost like the best way to do it is to sort of email and ask if you can stop by. Because the other thing too is like for people that I don't know very well, I'll usually like to have, and even people that I do to a certain extent, I'll usually like to talk to them to kind of get some motivations and things like that you can sort of put in the letter. And so yeah, if you email and say, can I stop by to ask you about a letter or something like that, that's sort of almost the best of both worlds. Because then you get the warm-up reminder, and then you come and you're like, hey, I emailed you, I said I was going to stop by, and I'm here, and then you can kind of go from there.
And then it doesn't feel for you like it's out of the blue, so you feel like you've crossed the threshold.
I do like the email to set up an appointment. One of the things is that it usually gives me a chance to kind of pull up their record before they come, so I can kind of brace myself if I'm going to have to say no.
Yeah, so it's just, I'd like to stop by and talk to you about writing me a letter. That way you're still coming, but you've kind of gone over the threshold. Yeah. It makes it easier for you.
A lot of times I run into somebody like walking over to the like walking someplace or like at the gym or something, and I'll go, oh, Dr. Shields, I was thinking about asking you for a letter of recommendation. And I'm looking at them, and I'm thinking, something like that. Yeah. And that's a little bit disconcerting. Yeah. And a lot of times I'm going, send me an email and we'll schedule an appointment, and that's what I'll do. Yeah. And then when they send me an email, then I actually see their name, and a lot of times that'll jiggle something. Yeah. But that's what I would prefer. Sometimes it's a little bit of both.
Would you recommend asking at the gym?
No, that's what we have the thing. If you want an A, look away.
Anything else? Did I see any other? Go ahead.
So I have a more specific question that I'd like to broaden out as well. I have a professor right now who I go to office hours consistently, routinely, but to use the terminology we use, they don't like to shoot BS. They're very, very business, and we've kind of deviated just a very little bit, and it's very quickly sort of pulled back to a very professional relationship. And I have an enormous amount of respect for this professor. But I'm wondering if this is a professor that, because I'm not really getting a very personal relationship with, I maybe should look elsewhere with, for this recommendation. And sort of along those same lines, are there things like that would be positive or negative markers that you'd see as we're sort of like gauging professors for if they would be good candidates to write us an a recommendation?
Can I ask what it is?
No.
Okay, I know. My gut instinct is, and this is just me. Okay, I'm speaking as me as a person and not me as a representative of the University of Maryland. All right. My gut instinct is that I think oftentimes you can really get a feel for these types of things if this person is not being giving of his or herself. They might not be comfortable about writing a letter. And there are a lot of professors who don't write letters and don't like writing letters. And this is something that is true of a lot of professors. And that they might be sending off that vibe. They just don't want, they want to take care of this class and then move on. Is this an upper or lower level class?
It's a 300 level.
It's a 300 level class. And so they might not be comfortable writing letters. The other thing too is that if you're getting an A in this class and this person knows you and knows your ability, then you might be able to get a letter that says this student was asked insightful questions. The kind of letter that you would get would be the kind of asked insightful questions, did incredibly well in a class that looked at X. And that might be a good letter. I mean, so that you have to ask yourself what kind of a thing. And the other thing to look at here, and this is really important, is what other kinds of letters are you going to get, and will this kind of a letter complement the other letters that you're going to be able to get? And I think that that's a really good thing to consider. So I was actually, in preparation for this thing, I was looking at some of the letters that I've written over the years, and I have a couple of letters that I'm particularly proud of that are really nice, thoughtful letters. And some of them, in and of themselves, might have been not so much about the students' intellectual abilities as much as they were about the students' interpersonal skills. And some of them might have been more about the students' intellectual abilities more so than they were about the students' interpersonal skills. And in some cases, it might have been better suited based on what this kid really needed for that particular thing. Because, I had some kids who said, I'm like, you didn't do all that great in my class. And they're like, yeah, but I have no person who knows me as well as you do. And my letter was tailor written because I really knew this kid in college, and no other teacher they had really knew the kid the way that I knew the kid. So I could write about, the way that they tried, the way that they got along really well with other kids, their leadership ability, those kinds of things. Whereas other teachers might have been able to write about their intellectual curiosity and the way that they put forth this sort of thing. So that might be the kind of question you have to ask yourself. What kind of a letter you can get from this person, and if that will fill a niche.
And don't be afraid to, in fact, don't be afraid. Make sure that you say, can you write me a good letter of recommendation? Because it will allow them the room to say, well, now that you mention it, I could write you a letter, but I don't know these things about you. I'm here if you need me, but you might want to look for somebody who maybe knows you a little bit better. So when you give it to them that way, you give them the opportunity to respond in kind.
I mean, when students ask me, I always tell them, I can write you this kind of letter or that kind of letter. I let them know right up front, this is the kind of letter I'm going to be able to write you, if that is to your liking. But I will always let them know if I cannot write them a positive letter, I mean a really positive letter. I let them know that, and there are some people that particularly, I'm not picking on you, sweetheart, really, really, really. But if you were, say, a 4th semester senior and you were applying tomorrow, and you knew nobody, and you came to me and say, Dr. Shields, I got an A in your genetic class. I know you don't know me from Adam, but I'm desperate. I need a letter from a science professor. Can you write me one? And I can't, and all I could do is say that you got an A in my class, and then you go, that's okay, I need a science professor, and I just don't care. And I'm like, fine. And that's what I would do. I would write, Jane Smith took my class, and then I would write a little bit more about this is a class where you do a lot of active learning, blah, 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 blah. She got an A, and she was ranked number 3 in a class of 280 that semester. And that would be what the letter is, which would blow, but at least you would have a letter from a science teacher.
Right.
So it would fill, you would be able to check, okay, check, letter from a science teacher.
And hopefully you have better letters from others.
And hopefully you had better letter from the person that you
There
shadowed.
may be A letters and B letters in your file.
Yeah.
And as long as we have more A letters than B, I think we're good.
Yeah.
Did you have a question?
It was kind of this, I was piggybacking off of that one. I was just wondering if it's even necessary to have like that personal relationship, or if you need to like force it if it's not there. And maybe you can get it from somebody else, like you said. I also had another question. But
Yeah, you want to definitely like read body language, like you're saying, and don't press it. Yeah, you're going to find people here that either have too much to do or don't have the right people skills to interact with people in productive ways. I mean, it's shocking, you'll find people like that here, and it, you know, the guy might be a savant or something like that. You know, it's hard to interact with, and then they write you this glowing letter. I mean, it's, you know, there's a million different ways it can go. But yeah, it's, you know, trust your instincts and don't press it. Not everyone is as receptive as we are, or as other people are. So yeah.
So what was your other question?
So I was just wondering, you know, obviously we should try as hard as we can to get an A in the class, but for whatever reason, if we get a B, or you're like failed an exam, like one exam you get a B plus and you're 10 points away, whatever it is, I mean, is that okay? Or you said you can have more A letters than B letters.
I didn't
I
mean
know.
letter A.
Just
No,
mean
I
like
meant
A plus A.
It's a
No, I
you
mean-
know, this is the best letter, this is the second best letter.
No, I've actually, some of the strongest letters I've ever written have been for students who've gotten B's in my class.
I mean, for me, like, my cutoff in quotation marks is like typically like a B minus. I've had a couple of people ask me letters for C pluses, and I'll email them back and I'll be like, you know, look, you didn't do so hot. You know, I can't really write a lot of great things. I'll do it if you want me to. Just realize that I can't write you a strong letter, and then I'll put the ball back in their court. But yeah, you know, it's again, I think there are like Patty said, there are things that we can write that don't necessarily address grades. Like if you come in and interact, you know, like you've come to my office a million times and stuff, and so, you know, I don't remember what you got in my courses, but beyond that, I know you well enough that, you know, there would be a lot of easy things to put in there, regardless of the grade, and those kind of things will speak to different aspects of how you would be as a doctor, you know, aside from what's on your transcript. And those are the kind of things I think that flesh it out. You know, anybody can look at your transcript and say, you know, he has a 3.6 or whatever, and he took all these courses. Andrew doesn't have, I don't know if he does or doesn't, I'm just making up that number. But anybody can look at your transcript and, you know, the university sends along a thing that says, you know, A is excellent and A plus is outstanding and B is, you know, above average. And they send those kind of boilerplate things that distill everything down numerically. And I think you guys really want to strive for things that are not on the transcript, that sort of flesh you out as a person, as opposed to just, you know, you took this course and you got this grade and you ranked at this percentile, and we don't think you're a danger to society. You want things that are going to talk about you as a person more than just the numbers. So in that case, you know, if you got a B in a hard course, you got a B minus in a really hard course with someone that you learned a lot from, that knows you, I would say, you know, if you felt comfortable with it, go and ask for the letter.
I mean, one of our really strongest candidates that we had a couple of years ago, he got 1 B in his entire time at Maryland. And I wrote one of his letters. And I loved him. And he almost loved me. But yeah, but it was like, I was going to ask you for a letter of recommendation, but I don't know if I can now. And I'm like, of course you can. But he was wonderful. I mean, he was in my office every week. I loved him. It just didn't work.
Question.
If we get a professor to write us a letter now, and then between like now and when we apply, we do something like get our research published, is it appropriate to update the professor and then maybe they could update the letter, or?
It's inappropriate not to. Yeah, I fully expect when people ask me for letters at the end of classes that, you know, between now and then you're going to do better things than you did in my class. And yeah, you know, when you're ready for your letter, you say, look, you know, I'm applying to med school now. Here's some of the stuff that I did since then. And that allows us to flesh out the letter. But the thing is that we got all the things in there from when we remember you after the course was taken. And so that foundation is there. And our, you know, it's not blurred by 2,000 students coming in after you and making us forget who you were.
That's why you should like let us know that you're going to be asking for a letter or whatever, but you wait until we put it in right before the VE collect, so we can flesh out the letter early and then set up the VE collect, and we put it in. Like Wendy lets some of us oldies put it in late.
I mean, what I do is, you know, for like something like that, I would say, you know, Zach was in this course with me and got this grade and ranked in this percentile, and then I would say, you know, some stuff about your personality, and then I'd leave like a blank spot in there that's, you know, stuff that happens after that's going to go here. And so then it's just a matter of you fleshing out the details and letting me know what happened and what else you did in publications and presentations and what you did research in and stuff, and then that all goes in there. Just like if you had come to me and said, you know, here's all the stuff I did, could you write the letter now? Yeah.
We do accept just to because Patty made the comment that we maybe accept a letter late. It's actually the only soft deadline that we have. So June 1st is the deadline. We want them by June 1st. We know this is one area where you don't have as much control over what happens as you may have over other parts of your application. So if they're still coming in after June 1st, we're still accepting letters. But it might delay when your committee letter gets done because we need all of that to get everything out the door. So it's best for you to try to put this together in such a way that it all comes together on June 1st.
I mean, I get it June 5th is what I'm saying. It's like if I fall asleep on June 1st, I will get it done by June 4th.
And we know where to find her.
And then, I get these emails, Dr. Shields.
Did you have a question?
Yes, if we're looking at asking for non-academic letters of recommendation as well, like from a supervisor or a clinical experience, maybe for people who aren't as used to writing letters of recommendation, especially for these pre-health programs, is there some guidance we can provide to them about what we can ask them to touch on or mention?
Yes, I do have a sheet that I can give you either electronically or in person that you can share with letter writers who are not familiar with this. I'd be a little careful because some people are, I would try to explore whether or not they are open to or would like some of this information about what is best in a letter and maybe what's not most helpful in a letter. And if they are, and some people are desperate for it, they just really have no idea, then we have something to give you. But you have to sort of navigate this a little bit carefully because some people might be offended. And so, that's kind of for you to sort of feel out.
And I would really double check that when I have a student tell me this is what I want you to include, I would look at them and go, oh, really? Because it's like, I've been doing this for a while. Please don't tell me what to include.
Most faculty are pretty comfortable with letters and they know what to include.
Yeah.
But off campus, it may, a physician or a work supervisor or something like that may have very little idea of what's useful content for a letter and be very pleased for you to share that with them, and we have something for you.
For clinical letters, do they have to be from a physician we work with, or can it be like a volunteer coordinator or something like that?
So it can be from anybody with whom you've interacted most closely in your clinical setting. What we don't need and what is not useful are so-and-so was a volunteer here and logged 50 hours. Because really med schools don't care about that. PA schools care about logging hours. Med schools, dental schools, they want to get a sense overall from how you describe your experiences, what you put in, what you got out. So they're not counting hours. They'll see that on your AMCAS application, but that's not a useful letter because they don't need that. But if it's somebody who's been able to talk about your personal qualities that you exhibited while you were there, working with patients, helping out on the floor, all those kinds of things, it doesn't really matter who the professional is. Right. Other questions for us? Yeah.
You said non-science recommendations were recommended, but if you're not a science major, is that pretty much required that you get a letter from your major?
Yeah, so if you are not a science major, you should have a letter from your major. Yes. Other questions?
Just to clarify that, so I'm sure if you are a science major, that doesn't necessarily mean you need a non-science letter, right?
No, right. So before, and you came in a little late, so you might not have heard, but
Yeah,
so before we said we recommend a non-science academic letter, it's typically not required. You might find, and it really is important for you once you get ready to apply to schools, that you double check with their letter what they like in case they have any outlying requirements, because there might be a school that specifically says they want a letter from an English faculty member, and I can think of one that I think either Penn State or something like that. I've seen that specific requirement before. I've seen like the University of Florida. They want a personal letter from like a priest or somebody who's worked with you in sort of a more ethical, moral, whatever, personal development capacity. Every school doesn't want that, and in fact, most schools really don't want that, and it would add no value to your application. So you can actually, if a school has a specific requirement like that, you can send that letter directly to AMCAS and attach it just to that school so that everybody doesn't get it if there's something special that one school's after. Or maybe your mentor knows the dean of admissions at a particular school and wants to write to them. You know, that's another time where you might have it earmarked to a school and not included in your common application packet. Okay.
Does a letter written by a person with a PhD or an MD carry more weight than a person who doesn't have that extra degree?
So with science letters, at Maryland, everybody who teaches you in a science is PhD.
Right.
And you should have your science letters from the instructor for the course. And Dr. Friedman said before, and I was going to actually follow up on that, it might be that your TA or somebody knows you a little better and might contribute a paragraph, which is, I think, usually fine with people. But the signature should be from the PhD faculty member. But it might also be the case that in another department, the instructor for the course doesn't have a PhD. And whoever the instructor for the course is can write the letter and they're qualified to write it. So, does that answer your question?
Kind of.
So, I mean, what didn't I address?
Well, can I talk to you afterwards real quick?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you have multiple majors, should you have a letter from every major?
Well, remember you're limited to 6. We want them to be quality
Only
letters.
6.
Not 6 majors. Good Lord. 6 letters.
Philadelphia.
So, I mean, you're going to have 2 science letters. You know, a research letter maybe, a clinical letter maybe. I mean, at some point, it might add up just right for you. And if you really know somebody from each one, you know, then you go for it. If you're just sort of trying to fill in all the boxes, remember always that you want the most quality letters that you can get. You know, quantity is much less important than that. The letters that you have are robust. Okay. Anything else? Good with the order? Well, thank you so much, Dr. Shields, Dr.